Good morning, everyone, and the warmest of welcomes this morning to Shepaug Valley School for our annual Stephen Reich Memorial Award Program. I'm Don Shells, the principal here, and we'd like to begin by inviting the Shepaug Chorus on stage to sing for us.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Bless America, America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
In 1846, Henry David Thoreau, the great American author and philosopher, was arrested and jailed for not paying his taxes. He refused to pay his taxes as an act of protest. He didn't like, at the time, the foreign policy of the government. Specifically, he opposed the Mexican-American War. And while he was in jail, he was visited by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Supposedly, Emerson walked in and said to Thoreau, "What are you doing here? What are you doing in there?" And that question was likely a veiled suggestion that Thoreau's project was finally futile. Who could think one person's failure to pay one tax would actually change the policy of a government whose resources come from the taxes of millions of people? So what Emerson was really probably saying with that question to Thoreau was, "You're wasting your time. This is pointless. It's like trying to move the oceans with an eyedropper." And then as the story goes, Thoreau supposedly looked back at Emerson and simply replied, "Well, what are you doing out there?" And that's a very compelling response, I think designed to make us wonder about how our collective apathy aggregates to injustice. It makes us ask and wonder whether millions of eyedroppers acting in concert could possibly move an ocean. Maybe it makes us want to pick up an eyedropper. I think this exchange between these two great American icons is very interesting, especially on a day like today. On a day when we remember heroism and ask what we learned from heroic examples. And furthermore, ask what, if anything, even ordinary people can and should do to repay our debts to people like Stephen. It maps the extreme boundaries of the spectrum we use to consider and define our ability and our capacity as agents of change. On one end lurks a sense of atrophied disengagement, which borders on despair. On the other, we see a quixotic, or in other words, nearly delusional, optimism that could lead us to pipe dreams, but not necessarily to any real impact. Most of the time, we all hope the truth lies somewhere in the middle, and on our best days, we lean with all our might towards the belief that what we do can and will matter. I'm thinking now about Major Reich's heroism. He was a hero over and over again, but today I'm considering his final act of heroism. And if it's your first time at the assembly, that involved an extremely hazardous helicopter ride, a selfless choice to save others in danger, and that helicopter was shot down. I'm thinking of that. And I'm also thinking of all those who knew him, friends and family, many of whom are here today. I'm imagining them all, had they been present at that moment and aware of the risks involved that he was about to take, certainly would have owned a right simply to ask, Stephen, what are you doing in there? What are you doing in that helicopter? Not, of course, to suggest that Major Reich didn't fully understand his purpose, not to suggest that we can ever really create an accurate accounting of the costs and benefits of sacrifice. Those are all questions for the angels, none of those things. But rather just to say, this may change everything, forever, for some or all involved. How do we know what to do? How can we be sure this action will come out on Thoreau's side of hope, rather than Emerson's side of resignation or despair? And maybe you can predict where I'm going next, because I also think Major Reich more than earned the right to look back at all of us from inside that helicopter and say, well, what are you doing out there? And when that question confronts us all with its wonderful legacy of American agency, flowing from our proud tradition of civil disobedience, transcendent vision, and calls to action, then our memory and celebration of Major Reich become true blessings. They bless us with inspiration and a sense of purpose and motivation, and embolden us to believe one eyedropper might save one thirsty person, even if it cannot move oceans. Those who sacrifice for the common good, for the most part, do not change the entire world. Thoreau and Major Reich did not end all warfare or create heaven on earth, but that's not the standard for defining our actions. Perhaps we should not be Emerson or Thoreau. Maybe we should spend our time deciding what small things we can do every day to make things better for just one person. Whenever I hear veterans talk about the best way to honor the sacrifices of their comrades, they usually focus on our small acts of kindness, which help protect and enhance the kind of world Major Reich was trying to defend. Along those lines, I'll close with one of my favorite stories involving the late, great Nobel laureate and famed physicist Richard Feynman. One of his high-powered graduate students visited him and said, "I worry I may never solve a big problem or make a huge scientific discovery in my life." And Feynman said to him, "Work on humble problems, problems that might seem small to others, because no problem is too small or too trivial if we can really do something about it." And sometimes starting with little problems, like Feynman did, leads to solutions for big problems, which in this case led to a Nobel Prize, or which in Major Reich's case led to an act of major heroism. Then again, we don't all need to be true heroes, but heroes inspire us to reach for what is heroic. So we're incredibly grateful for our memories of Major Reich's heroism, which is a definite blessing. Thank you all very much, and now I'm very happy to introduce and invite Mr. Mike Kirsten to the podium.
Shells, and I want to congratulate Mr. Shells on his new appointment as Superintendent of Region 12. So congratulations. Good morning and welcome everyone, as we honor not only Stephen Reich, but we honor a great Shepaug student who character, service, leadership, and achievement. And as we embark on this ceremony here, you know, we were talking, and Scott and I have talked a couple times about how it's been 20 years. And from day one, the support that we get from not only the students, the faculty, today we have veterans who are with us. We have past recipients. Today's past recipients that I saw that are here: Claire Kirsten, Luke Schneider, Jack Buchholz, Lily Shore. Surprised her family last night, I guess in the middle of the night at about 3 a.m. So we want to welcome all of you and thank you for constantly and continuing to support this ceremony and the importance of it. I'd also like to recognize gentleman John Holt back near the camera there. John's doing a little story with the Reichs. We got a chance to meet John last week. He's been involved in journalism for 30-some years. You might recognize him from Channel 3 and Fox Sports and some of those over the years. So thank you for understanding. And when talking to John last week, he certainly embraced the importance of the Stephen Reich story. So thank you, John. I want to, as always, thank our chorus and band director, Beth Harbison, and Mr. O. I'm not going to mess your name up, so I'm going to go by Mr. O. And I also want to recognize, and I think Christiane Pearson, you've been doing this for 2 or 3 years. I was looking back at the programs, and also Talon Profita. Thank you for everything that you bring musically to this ceremony. Thank you. We've had a tremendous run of guest speakers over the last 20 years, and this year is no different. This year's guest speaker, Matt Brady, is a 1999 graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. As an Army Special Operations Officer, he flew over 2,000 hours in the OH-58D Kiowa Warrior reconnaissance helicopter and the MH-47D6 Chinook assault helicopters. Matt earned his master's in military strategy from the Air War College, and in 2016, he earned his MBA from the Harvard Business School. Matt owns and operates a small business that employs dozens of veterans in Alabama and Nevada, building wildfire brush trucks. He's been married for 22 years, and he has 3 boys. As Dr. Shells alluded to earlier, we lost Stephen Reich 20 years ago in that mission, 2005, June 28. And he went along with 7 Night Stalkers and 8 SEALs to rescue 4 other SEALs that were in trouble. And one of Major Reich's fellow comrades, fellow Night Stalkers, was part of that mission back at the base and served alongside Stephen Reich. And Matt Brady is here. He flew in from Alabama, and it is our honor to welcome Matt Brady to the stage today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Dr. Shells, thank you for the introduction, for the entire event. Really moving words, so thank you very much. And of course, the Reich family, Ray and Sue, as always, great to see you again, this time in a very different setting than what I'm used to. And so it's a tremendous honor to be in Stephen's home, his hometown, his school, and just a forewarning, I come from Irish heritage, and I often get like this stoppage in my throat. It's a medical condition, and I have to stop speaking for extended periods of time as I get choked up and emotional. It's purely hereditary, I apologize. But it will happen from time to time, and I give you permission that when it happens, you'll all know it, and just feel free to multitask or do something that you'd like to do. I'll regain myself in a second. But Megan and Anne-Marie, so good to see you again and meet you for the first time. Actually, we met at 3rd Battalion in Savannah decades ago. you were all visiting as a family, and I was still serving there, and it was our honor and my honor to show you around the base a little bit at 3rd Battalion. I'm not going to take a lot of time this morning, just simply because I don't want to be one of those speakers that takes up your whole day and you don't remember what I said anyway. And so I'm going to try to leave you with just some points that I think you'll remember. I apologize for this. This is a typical Army slide with bullet points. I've only got 3 slides, so don't be afraid. This is one of 3, and I just bulletized them out of habit. But this is the Night Stalkers, the SOAR, the Special Operations Aviation Regiment. And one thing that drew Stephen to this regiment and to this unit was his dedication to a very precise mission and a commitment to excellence that this regiment embodies. So when you see the TOT, what that stands for is time on target, anywhere in the world, on target, on time, plus or minus 30 seconds. And that's not that's not hyperbole or something that we aspire to. It literally is every mission that we do, we time it to the second so that we arrive inside that window of time. So clearly it calls for people that are dedicated to precision, dedicated to a craft, and it tends to attract those sorts of aviators from the U.S. Army. We specialize in night flying and night flight techniques. So when you hear the term black helicopters, they really do exist, and they're in this unit just for practical reasons, so that we blend in more with the nighttime, so that we can conduct operations unseen. But we do specialize in what's called night vision goggle flying. So if you've seen on the movies, the guys and girls have the tubes over their eyes at night, and we would typically fly with those at very low levels. And then just to kind of familiarize you with the unit that Stephen was a part of, popular culture is an easy reference point. So Black Hawk Down, if you've seen that movie or read that book, I know I'm kind of dating myself, but that was the 160th SOAR in Mogadishu, Somalia. The Bin Laden raid in Pakistan was the 160th. Of course, a lone survivor that Stephen was a part of. And I think those are probably the big 3. And then I won't bore you with selection. Let's go to the next slide. Drew, where's Drew at? Okay, I'll just say your name, Drew, and then you can okay, so Stephen and I didn't fly that cool little one. That did not have enough muscle for Stephen and I. It did not have enough horsepower. So we flew this one. Tandem rotor, tandem engines, lots of horsepower, power for days. And when I met Stephen, we'll just go one more slide. There's a great picture of him. Okay, so here's me and Stephen in 2004 in Savannah, Georgia. Half of this picture is a very famous picture. It's been all over the world. And it's such a great picture of Stephen. What people don't realize is that that is only half of a whole picture, and the whole picture is me not very happy. And the reason I'm not is because we were training to fly this helicopter, Stephen and I, just by ourselves. We were a flight school class of 2 in Savannah, Georgia. And the reason we were classmates, even though he outranked me, is I was new to the Chinook. Stephen was new to this variation of the Chinook. So it was a very special variant called the D model, Super D, and only Savannah, Georgia, only our battalion in Savannah had this model of Chinook. So he was already an experienced Night Stalker, but he had to go back to the drawing board with little old me coming into the unit for the first time, and we trained together we had our own instructor, and then we were the 2 students. So the reason he's laughing in this picture, I'm not, is because he dubbed himself valedictorian of the class that day that we graduated, which meant that I was the bottom of the class, the only other position, and he thought that was hilarious. But what I really took away from this experience with him is, Stephen was truly a man of character, and I know this award is based on 4 very important criteria: leadership, achievement, service, and character. But character is the only one of the four that you arguably do not claim, right? You can claim a leadership position, claim you are a leader. You may not be a good one, but you can still claim you're a leader. You can achieve things, say I've achieved X, Y, and Z. I serve my country or my community. You can claim the mantle of servicehood and servant leadership. But your character is what other people say about you. And you have to earn that. So Stephen earned the right to be called a man of character when I served with him. So let me just give you some examples. So when we were learning to fly this helicopter in Savannah, we were flying at night. We were coming to a very low lit and small landing zone. And Stephen was at the controls and I was sitting next to him. Our instructor was between us in what's called the jump seat. And we were traveling probably about 110 knots, pretty fast and very low. And when Stephen saw the landing zone, he pointed it out, said, Matt, I'm gonna land it right there in that field, hang on. And he pitched the aircraft up to a degree that I was very uncomfortable with in terms of its angle, slowed the helicopter down almost to a complete stop, and settled it on the ground with such grace that by the time the dust and grass had settled, I was not sure if we were going to be on the ground. And when I could finally see out the cockpit and realize we were on the ground, it was one of the most professional, expert landings in this helicopter I've ever seen. Now he wasn't able to do that because he just is a naturally good aviator. He did that from weeks and weeks and weeks of practicing over and over and over again. So one thing that makes him a great man of character is his willingness to pay the price, his willingness to train repeatedly at mundane tasks, seemingly mundane tasks, in the pursuit of something very excellent and unique. And it was his ability to put that helicopter in that position that day in training that led me to start to understand what kind of character this man possessed. So fast forward probably about a year, I was in Afghanistan for the first time. I had already deployed to Iraq a couple of years before that, so I was not unfamiliar with combat operations. But this is the first time I had served in Afghanistan. Stephen had been there probably for a month. He was over there in May of 2005. I had just arrived at the end of May, and we started to put together combat operations for the next 2, 3, 4 months of the campaign. And a Navy SEAL walked in the room and said, we'd like to do an operation called Operation Red Wings with you. It's where you will insert 4 SEALs into the Hindu Kush Mountains and leave them there for a period of days. They'll collect intelligence, and then the idea is to go pick them back up. Is there a way I could get a bottle of water or something, if you wouldn't mind? I'm sorry. So this was the beginning of what you would probably know as the mission called Lone Survivor, where only one of these SEALs makes it out. So we started putting this mission together. We started to lay the groundwork for it. I flew the night before on June 27th into the Shepaug Valley with these 4 SEALs, and Stephen stayed in the operations center. And when I started to get close to the landing zone, I started to hear things on the radio about what the enemy was doing in the area. And one of the things that concerned me, and one of the things that concerned Stephen, was the enemy is starting to occupy one of our alternate landing zones. So if there's a problem with the first landing zone, they're occupying the second one, and that would be the criteria we would need to abort the whole mission and maybe restart it another day. So as I was flying up and getting close to putting these 4 SEALs in, I heard the radio traffic that there are in fact armed men in our alternate landing zone. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Thank you. Now, the letter of the law states, sorry, it's a bad use of the word law. By the book in the Army, that should abort the mission right there, having those men in the alternate LZ. But Stephen had trained me to do things a little bit differently. He trained me to think on my feet, to think critically in challenging situations. And I knew this was a priority mission that we had to accomplish. And the armed men were not in our primary landing zone. And to me, that did not satisfy the need to cancel this mission. So I continued to go to our primary landing zone, and the 4 SEALs went down the rope, and I flew back to join Stephen. When I got back to base, I was intercepted by a colonel who was furious that I continued Operation Red Wings, given that we had abort criteria that was met of some type. He was ready to chop my head off. And Stephen was standing beside him, and he said, didn't say anything. And after the colonel was done, Stephen looked at me and he said, "Matt, were those armed men in the primary landing zone?" I said, "No, sir, they weren't." He goes, and he said, "Does this fundamentally alter the risk of the mission by them being in a different area than we put the SEALs?" I said, "No, sir, it doesn't alter the risk of the mission." He said, "Okay, so then you made the call on your own." I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He said, "Okay, well, that was absolutely the right call, and I've got your back." And he turned around and proceeded to chew the colonel out in front of me. And he went to bat for me in that moment. And it taught me something about Stephen's character. And that is, if you can provide your rationale for whatever you're doing, and the rationale is sound, it makes sense, it follows the principles that you've been taught, then he's going to support you in every way that he can. He supported me that night in the face of that adversity. So another data point for me as I'm collecting about Stephen's character. The last thing I want to say about his character is this. When about 6 or 7 hours had gone by, I was woken up in the middle of the day. And so again, like I said, we fly primarily at night. And getting woken up in the daytime is not normal. And one of my men had come to me and said, "Matt, we've got to get those 4 SEALs out. They've been compromised. The mission's been compromised by some goat herders or some folks that were just, kind of walking along a trail." And so I said, "Okay," and I rounded up our crews, our equipment, I raced down to the helicopters, and got on board the helicopter and was talking to the lead SEAL on the mission when I felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was Stephen. And again, Stephen asked, "Matt, walk me through your rationale here for what's going on." Always coaching, always mentoring, no matter the situation. And so I explained to him, "Okay, Major Reich, here's the situation. I think what we're going to do is X, Y, and Z. That gives us the best shot." And I laid out the battle plan, essentially. And he said, "Great, I love it. Everything except the parts that involve you. Now I want you to get off." So that was a shock to me. It was a shock to the men on the aircraft, in a way. Now, in a selfish way, I wanted to stay on. I want the ball in my hand, as Ray Reich says. I wanted the ball, and Stephen said, "I'm taking the ball." So in a way, I was shocked. In a way, the guys were shocked. But in a way, we weren't, because one thing that Stephen lived by in terms of his character was he was never going to ask his men to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. So that day, Stephen, behind the scenes, as I was preparing things to go forward, was assessing what was going on. He was assessing the risk, and he understood that if there's any moment in this battle where he's going to have an influence, it's going to be right now as a commander, and that it's his duty to make sure that he not only plays that role as a commanding officer in that moment, but also shows his men in in a very real way, I'm not willing to risk all of us here if I'm not also willing to share my burden of that risk. It was an amazing moment for me, for the men. I don't know if they would have taken off if he hadn't done that. I really don't. So, but there's something else you need to know about Stephen. And that is he loved more than anything to win. Did I get that one wrong? He loved to win. I mean, it's legendary, even on runs. I remember he was telling me how he would do that to friends of hers, just go on a nice cordial jog, and it ends up in a full-blown sprint, right? He had to come in first, he had to win. Stephen got on board that day because he wanted to win. And let me explain that very quickly. The Army is slow. It's bureaucratic, like a lot of bureaucracies. It was slow that day to react to what was going on. There was no shortage of patriotism or valor amongst the ranks of the headquarters of where we were operating, but they were just very, very slow. Stephen knew if we wanted to win that day, he had to take action. He had to be thorough and say, what am I doing sitting here? I haven't been given an order yet. What am I going to do? What good am I doing sitting here? And so he gathered the crew, he launched the aircraft because he knew time was of the essence. Approval did come. We were in the air already and almost at the target, but approval did come. It's very unusual. The other thing I want to share that he did, and how I know he loves to win, is he led with the Chinook into the battle zone, into the area of operations. This is a very large machine. Now, normally, when you do Army operations, you lead with artillery, you lead with cruise missiles, you lead with maybe some attack helicopters, and then this thing shows up. Stephen led with this before anything else, and he knew what he was doing. He knew that by changing the calculus of the enemy on the ground and by throwing them off balance, he knew that he would change the outcome of the battle going on below him. And that's what he did. Again, didn't have express approval to do it, but he did it because he's a man of character. He knew his mission. He knew what was expected of him. He knew what the people on the ground expected of him. And there were American lives in danger that day, and he was going to make a difference. So, everything he did that day is just a testament to who he is as a man, who he was as an officer, a mentor, and a leader. Because he did what he did, it in a very real way changed the calculus for us in that valley. Afghanistan's a very complex situation. It was. Very complicated, complex environment. One valley affects the valley next to it in different ways. They're obviously not all combined. But that day, that month, and that year, the Korengal Valley was ours. We owned it. Nothing went on in that valley we didn't know about, thanks to Stephen Reich. And so he launched that day because as a man of character, he wanted to win. He knew that winning mattered, and that he was going to share the risk along with his men. Not sure I'll meet another man like Stephen, but here's my challenge to you guys and girls. Find out how you produced them. You guys produced them. So the students, in this seat, like that's you. He came from this environment. He came from a bulletproof American family, the Reich family. And this community, this school produced that man along with the Reichs. So my challenge to you is, if you're sitting in this seat, understand how did Stephen become the way that he was, and start making choices every day that lead to that kind of a person, that lead me to be that kind of a person. If you're a teacher here, faculty, I would challenge you. What are you doing every day in the classroom that helps mold people like Stephen Reich? And what are you doing every day in the classroom that makes the Reich family and families like the Reichs bulletproof American families that have the tools and resources and support they need to raise people like Stephen Reich? It's a product of the American family. I hope to God we see another Stephen Reich, but that's my story, and I'll just leave you with the last stanza in our motto because it doesn't make me cry, and I don't want to leave on a crying note, if that's all right with you. So the motto that Stephen believed in and that I believe in and that we all believed in is that we serve with the memory and pride of those who have gone before us because they loved to fight, fought to win, and would rather die than quit. Night Stalkers, don't quit. Thanks for that.
Good morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Matt Brady, for joining us, for sharing your thoughts, for being with us today. For 20 years, we've gathered on this Thursday before Memorial Day to remember Stephen and to honor his life of service and sacrifice. This award ceremony gives us an opportunity to reflect on the meaning of and importance of Memorial Day, one of the most solemn and sacred days of the year. A day we can remember and be thankful for all those who've given their lives for our country. And today we will recognize one of our own students and how they've demonstrated the qualities of this award. But it's more than about recognizing one student. It's really about all of us and provides an example of a life well lived. When this was established, the criteria were left intentionally broad, so that all Shepaug students could be considered, because everyone has the capacity to demonstrate character, service, leadership, and achievement, but we will all do it in different ways. Over the past few days, I've been thinking about this award, having to stand up here and do this, and getting the ceremony put together with everyone else, and also thinking of the ground that we've covered over the past 20 years. For us, it may not seem that long. There's times it seem like it could have been 3 days ago or last week. But then we think about and put it in perspective, and there isn't a student in here that was born when this happened. One of the things that stands out in thinking about this is what persists through the years are the connections, the connections, the relationships that have formed. To have Matt Brady come 20 years later, right, and share his connection is powerful. And a couple of the connections that occurred to me. Mr. Reich has been connected to Shepaug baseball for a long time. He coached back when we were playing. When he stopped coaching, he took over as scorekeeper. But he stepped back from that when the last coach retired. I came in, he said, take some time off and be a fan. And then after that season, Stephen was killed. And Coach Kirsten and I thought maybe it'd be a good idea if we see if we could get him to come back So we wrapped up a scorebook, gave it to him for Christmas, and offered him a job for no pay. Somehow he accepted. But the bond that's formed between Mr. Reich and our guys has been really special to watch. But I will tell you guys, he's mellowed quite a bit. And he was not quite as patient with us back when we were playing. And every now and then, one of them will come up and say, "Ooh, did you hear what Mr. Reich said?" He said, you know, he's maybe said something pretty direct, and Coach and I would just say, "Yeah, okay, got it." We could tell you, but it's obvious watching the relationship between them, how much our kids respect the regard they have for Mr. Reich and how much they appreciate him being there for us all the time. And on a different note, so when Stephen was in active duty, especially after 9/11, when he was in Afghanistan, when he'd come back to visit Washington, this was his chance to step back from reality and the things that he was dealing with every day. He didn't talk a lot about what he was doing, the missions he was on. We've learned so much more the past few years, particularly in conversations with Mrs. Reich. And the connections that Mrs. Reich has maintained with those who've served with Stephen, and she has been instrumental in arranging the great majority of the speakers that we've had here over the years, including former Night Stalkers like Mike Hertzendorf and Ken Cole and Matt Brady. And because of her, many of us have had the privilege of meeting and getting to know some of the men that Stephen served with, some of his fellow Night Stalkers. And it is truly a remarkable group. When they talk about the best of the best, you don't use that term lightly. The difference is they never use it. You know, when you have to tell somebody you're the best, maybe not. They don't have to tell anybody because everybody knows. And they embody all the qualities Stephen did. And what's always stood out in all of them that we've got to meet is their selfless service and their humility. And one other thought that occurred as over the last couple weeks is when we created this award, and this was a group effort, one of our hopes that it would be something that it would last and that it would be relevant a few years down the road. And it's hard to believe, but we are a few years down the road. And it feels like it has as much meaning today and maybe more than it did 20 years ago. And I'm not sure any of us could have imagined that 20 years ago, how this would become such a part of the Shepaug culture. And that's because of the Shepaug community. Our students, teachers, staff, administrators, board members, community members. You have made this part of our shared experience. It's not from anywhere else, but what you have embraced. We are blessed to be in this community and go to this school. I'm sure sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. And many of you probably can't wait to leave here, and we probably didn't feel much differently back then. But you have taken ownership of this. You have made it what it is. You write nominations, you participate in the ceremony, you talk about it, you are invested in it. And this has become a special day, this has become a special part of the Shepaug school year because of how you've embraced it. And I know I speak for the Reich family and those of us on the committee, and for all his friends, when I say that we are deeply grateful to all of you for how you've made this part of our Shepaug experience. And to the Reich family, to the Shepaug community, for the support through the years. To Matt, to all our veterans and active service members here today, and all who've given their lives for our country, we are grateful and we're humbled by the selfless service of so many. At this time, we didn't decide. I'd like to ask Megan and Anne-Marie, both of Stephen's sisters, to join us, please. Our sister didn't tell me just this. So this year's recipient, and again, the number of nominations that have come from teachers, from students, it's overwhelming. And every year, we can stick around for a little bit. Every year, it's inspiring to read what is written about our students. Well, some of the quotes about this student: incredible positive energy that inspires others. Remarked about uncommon kindness, generosity, and powerful character. She is humble, kind. Her strong moral compass and sense of responsibility allow her to lead effectively and set high standards. It is our pleasure to present the Stephen Reich Memorial Award to Peyton King.
Singing
Well, that concludes our ceremony today. I want to thank everybody once again for coming, especially Matt Brady for making the trip up here. And I want to congratulate Peyton. I believe you guys are on to period 4. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.